Last week on Your World.
Every year in the United States, nearly 44,000 people die of a drug overdose. And the biggest cause of these deaths can be easily found in most people's medicine cabinets: prescription pain pills.
The doctors had no intention of passing out addictive pills, but in 2012, there was enough prescriptions written in our nation that every man, woman, and child could have an opioid prescription.
Wow. These medications have now become a fun but extremely dangerous pastime for many of today's youth.
When you are an opioid user, it is the most incredibly unforgiving drug that you can use because it calls your name forever.
It gets worse. Many of these teens are turning to a cheaper and far deadlier alternative: heroin.
Well, heroin is almost old news now, if you want to know the truth, because heroin has gone on to become fentanyl and fentanyl carfentanil, and although it's all morphine derivatives, it's something stronger and more intense.
This is a serious issue. People are dying as a result of this.
It's a fight to the death.
So what can you do to protect your own children from this growing epidemic?
If you can do one thing today, clean out your medicine cabinet.
Listen to that.
We'll continue with part 2 of this episode. You don't want to miss this.
Changing one life, time after time. Oh Lord, we do it all for you.
Through the trials I see, I'll always believe a new life starts with me. Oh,
Change your world today. Change is gonna come your way. Change and get an understanding. His grace will transform you.
Welcome back to Your World. Now we're back for part 2 of our in-depth look at the drug epidemic affecting so many of our teens: heroin. My next 2 guests are both recovering addicts whose lives hit below rock bottom.
Everything was falling apart. My marriage started to crumble. I found myself incarcerated.
After that, I kind of went back to the same thing, what I always knew: running the streets, making plays, whatever it was.
They each spent thousands of dollars on prescription painkillers and heroin for years, unable and unwilling to admit they needed help. But today, through the grace of God, they are now clean, sober, and healing their relationships and their hearts. And they're here to help us become better aware of this epidemic that has taken so many of our youth. Please help me welcome Justin and Wyndi to the Your World Show. This is a serious topic. I learned a lot when I was talking to Missy. So Wyndi, let's start with you. Take us into your world, your first experience with drugs and the journey that you took. And I understand you have
A daughter.
a daughter.
Mm-hmm.
You've gone through it, you're out. You know, each of you guys are participating in helping to mount up an attack against this disease of addiction. But bring us into your world.
Well, like many other heroin addicts, I first was prescribed pain pills. I just continued to take as prescribed, and the next thing I know, I was addicted to the pain pills, and it really got a hold of me. I started having the typical things happen that happens when you use drugs. I lost my job, my marriage started to crumble. Everything was falling apart, so I didn't have insurance anymore, and whenever I stopped getting my prescription from the doctor, I was like physically sick and emotionally torn apart. So I ended up resorting to the street version of heroin, and it progressed quickly. And within 6 months from the first time I used heroin instead of just pain pills, everything had fallen apart. I found myself incarcerated. My marriage was over. I didn't have a job. Everything had just completely fallen apart.
And all of this started with a prescription from the doctor? Now see, that really highlights what we were talking about in the last show, that we've got to accept responsibility for looking at that prescription. You challenged us and asked the question how many people actually read the small print to find out, or asked the question whether it was an addictive type of drug. But she just took us down the road that started with a prescription from the doctor. It just hit me, Missy. That just did something to me. I mean, we talked about it, but I'm hearing a highlight of her journey. It started with the doctor.
And that's why you have to be so proactive in finding out, what is this medication you're giving me? What is it? What's it gonna do? Is it addictive? Do I have to take the whole thing? Is it a weaning drug? All those questions you have to know. You have to understand what you're putting into your body.
All of the things Wyndi just said and talked to us about, I mean, look at her. Does she look like you understand what I'm saying? First of all, thank God for the power of His grace. But did you hear the journey that started with a prescription from your doctor, and it impacted almost every area of your life?
Yes.
What was the recovery like to get you from all of that to where you are right now?
Well, when I was incarcerated, I reconnected with God and started praying a lot, getting spiritually well. And whenever I was released from incarceration, I went to a program called the Women's Extension. It's an inpatient rehab. They really helped me get my life back on track, and that was where I was introduced to the Zone. It was just a really cool place. Like, when you first start recovery, it can kind of be like, it's hard. You're trying to get into this new lifestyle and get your thinking back on track from where you had just been taken so off track in life when using. And the Zone made it fun. There's a lot of cool people there trying to get their life back on track, going through the same thing that I was going through. But there was activities to do that were related in sober living. The meetings, just everything about what the Zone represents is what I needed whenever I was getting back on track for recovery. It made it fun, you know? It put life back into the living.
You know, you said two things I really want to highlight. To get my spiritual life together, because if I'm just messed up spiritually, that's going to be a reflection. I'm going to see it on the outside based on who I am and what's going on spiritually. And to get my thinking back together. And a lot of people don't understand that this disease will impact the way you think. And the way you think will impact the way you feel, and your emotions and your decisions will be impacted. Your actions will be impacted. Your habits will be created. Character is going to be impacted. And then your destiny is going to end up as a result of bad thinking that came from what you were exposed to. I describe that as the anatomy of life. Talk to me about that.
Well, my journey was a little bit different than Wyndi's, but I started at a much younger age, smoking weed and whatnot, 12, 13 years old. I used the needle for my first time when I was 15. Continued on all through high school, heroin and meth, and ended up going into the Navy and serving the country, but also still making the same mistakes. I got detoxed in boot camp, but it wasn't so much getting sober and learning anything new. It was just I got clean for the time I needed to, and then continued on and just traded in the habit for something else when I was in the service. So I ended up getting in trouble and I ended up getting out. But after that, I kind of went back to the same thing, what I always knew, running the streets, making plays, whatever it was. Eventually, I got into a lot more serious trouble and was lucky enough to get accepted into the Veterans Accountability Court program in Cobb. And through that, my mother had been talking to Missy. They had known each other from my sister and her daughter cheering in school. And she was begging me the whole time I was locked up this last time, just please go see her, go find out what this is all about. And that was probably one of the best decisions I ever made, because I started volunteering, doing community service with Missy and trying to help the place get started. And then about a month and a half after that, I was offered a full-time position there, which again goes back to that, finding a job was impossible as a convicted felon. Now I run the thrift store downstairs, and I've got all those things in my life that they weren't there before. I have my kids back around. I have a stable and adequate housing. I have a vehicle. I have like a sustainable life. And that's something that recovery has really done for me. And the Zone was a humongous backbone in that for me.
Man, I'm telling you, I know this is probably not appropriate for me to say on the air, on the television show, but Missy, you have been called by God. There's something anointed about what you're doing, because there are lots of programs that exist, but twice I've heard that there's something about what you do and what you've been called to do. And the evidence is sitting right here. I mean, I got chills when he was talking. I just had a moment when Wyndi was talking, just the things we just take for granted or don't think about. And so now you and your daughter.
Well, currently, I don't have my daughter back. Whenever I was incarcerated, she was given to my ex-mother-in-law. She's the clerk of juvenile court in Bartow County, so every time I've attempted to get her back, I've hit more closed doors. I go to court again December 16th, and by the grace of God, she'll be starting back the reunification process with me. But I get to see her every 2 weeks, not as much as I would like. That's been the struggle that 2 years into sobriety, I still have to face every day, not being able to wake up with my daughter.
Well, I agree in the name of Jesus that the favor of God will be released upon your life and upon your situation, and God will favor you, and that favor will become explosive in your life. You know, Justin, when you talk about the duration of that long journey, how long was that? I mean, from all of the stuff you've experienced to where you are right now?
Well, the serious drugs started about 12 years old and continued up until January 15th of 2016. When I got arrested that time, it was a saving grace. I was running, so instead of being thrown to the ground, the cop literally just sat there and said, "What's up? Like, come talk to me, man." And that changed my initial thinking of what this was gonna be, because that had never happened before. It had always been there, gonna catch me, and that was it. This guy pretty much said, what's going on, man? Why are you doing this? And that sparked something. And then a few months later, I had a lawyer that did the same thing. He came in and was like, "I met your family, you have beautiful kids. What are you doing to fix you?" And that really just clicked something for me.
I'd like for Missy to really, if she could address this, how insensitive do you believe our society, or maybe people who are struggling with addictions, are when someone tries to encourage them that they need to get out and there's a better way?
That's tough, because as much work as we've done, and as much as in Metro Atlanta, I think we're making a difference in building a huge community of recovery. All you have to really do to understand people's perception is get on social media and read where somebody has posted that another person has died or that somebody has overdosed, and hear the moral failure comments, the good, we don't need people like that anyway, this is the scum of the earth, be glad they're gone. It's horrible the way that people are referred to, and the way that some people still address the stigma of addiction because they believe that it's a choice, it's a moral failure, and that it's that person's fault. But what they don't understand is they've not researched, they've not looked at the things that led to this point. When we legalized marijuana in specific states, immediately drug dealers started plowing down their marijuana fields and planting poppies so that they could get into the opioids. And then from there they went and they found out who prescribes more than anybody, who prescribes opioids in this nation. And they sent that heroin from those poppy plants straight to those communities and started dispersing things. So everybody thinks that this was a moral failure, but you heard Wyndi, she had one prescription. 1 out of 10 people have a genetic predisposition to fall into addiction. That's their composition. Yeah. And for that to be so much a part of that, and people still not understand the disease of addiction, shame on them, because we'll never change how we perceive addiction and how this epidemic is rolling over our children in this generation if people don't invest in understanding what created it and what caused it. And when you still get those comments, I remember, and I'll never forget, when I did my first news story, one of the comments, "One less mouth to feed."
Wow, that's sad. It's sad that you have a society that is so insensitive that they could even allow something like that to come out of their mouth. But it's always been the issue of what people don't understand.
That is true, but I have to say this. If I say that, I have to tell you this. I would love for you to come visit the zone one day, because we have 21,000 square feet, and every single inch of that recovery center was donated by people in our community. And it is the most beautiful facility you will ever see. And it was all to help children get well, help people get well. Because recovery is possible, it happens, and it is happening at the zone.
Oh man, that's awesome. I'd love to come and visit because it's amazing.
But Dr. Dollar, these are the people that I was telling you about that make the difference.
Yeah.
Because this is hope. This is hope sitting on this couch.
It is. Wyndi, I'm still dealing with, you just went to the doctor one day. But for most of our mindset, or what we would think, well, first of all, this is somebody who made a choice to get involved in addictions because they couldn't handle the pressure of life. And what I've learned today, that this is so much deeper than that. What would you share with a young lady who experienced what you experienced?
Well, I would tell everyone listening, don't think that you're above addiction. It could happen to anyone, because I know a lot of people who heard me say that I was prescribed medicine and then I found myself going and getting it elsewhere. They're probably thinking, why did she do that? Why didn't she just stop? My mind had already been altered. I was already under the influence of something that a doctor told me I was safe to take, and I wasn't aware of what had happened. I felt normal for the moment I was in, and I know that I was physically sick and I needed to do something about it, and so I did something about it. And when I think about people like belittling or shaming people for that, you can't judge someone until you're in that moment. When you're physically sick and you're not thinking clear and you make a bad decision that leads to more bad consequences, it's like you need programs like people like Missy and the Zone to pull you back out of it. I needed help to get better. I couldn't, at that moment, I couldn't do it on my own. But nobody really suspected how bad off I was, because I was a college-educated woman, married, owned a home, had a nice car, took care of my child at all the functions, and from the outside, no one realized everything was falling apart. I used for less than a year altogether, from prescriptions to illicit street drugs, and it took me to the bottom so quick. What I had spent my entire 5 years of adulthood, because I'm only 27, it was gone for me in 1 year. So my biggest piece of advice is for nobody to think that they're too good for it to happen to them, that they're too strong for them to fall victim, because it could happen to anyone.
And it is, because one of the concerns that I have is the judge that has this disease, but nobody knows about it yet. And now he's trying to do his job under the influence. Or the police officer that has this disease and nobody knows about it yet. Or the politician that has this disease and nobody knows about it yet. And so you do this in secret, as some way it begins to unravel, because it will. You're not going to be able to stay under the cover as you probably would think that you would. I mean, well, that's a good question. How did you guys try to stay under the cover and keep the mask on, and how long did it take before that all crumbled?
I denied I had a problem until I was incarcerated. I was still trying to function normally and completely in denial. And until I hit rock bottom, I wasn't even aware of how bad things had gotten. So I tried to hide behind anything I could and hide my addiction for as long as I could.
Early on, it was a hiding thing. I was young, so it wasn't really socially or anything. It wasn't accepted at all. As my addiction grew, so did my friend base in that. There was no reason to hide it anymore. There was no way my family didn't know. So no, I didn't really hide it, especially once I got further along in it. I'm a Cobb native. I was born and raised there. Everyone knew what I did. It's a miracle that I didn't get caught before. But that's one of those things for me, is that I know that in literature it tells you that you're promised either jail, institution, or death. And no matter what role in life you play, no matter what social status or income, it does not matter. Eventually, you're gonna slip up, and there's no way, because the disease of addiction is so strong that without any kind of outside interference, it's gonna keep growing.
Yeah. I again want to say, one woman took her tragedy and turned it into you guys' triumph. And that's what I see. Missy, thank you. Thank you you could have really got in your circle and stayed there in your circle and grieved and only just thought about you and what you've gone through. But you decided to step out of that circle. You allowed the power of God to use your anointing and your ability. And now we have evidence on this couch right now of the power of the time that you spent with the Spirit of God to produce the revelations and the wisdoms of what you're sharing with so many hurting people. Congratulations, and we are so, so thankful for the lives that are being changed through the ministry that God has given you. Don't you appreciate these guys so much? Awesome, man. I have something that I share with some of my guests, really in programs like this, to just really help us to remember the day that we spent together. It's called a grace covenant. It says, I am the righteousness of God, and has your name there, Missy Owen. I believe Jesus loves me and nothing will ever change that. I believe that grace in the person of Jesus Christ has already provided everything I will ever need to have a healthy, fulfilling, and prosperous life. I believe everything in my past is in my past, and Jesus has chosen not to remember it. Neither will I. I will daily proclaim I'm the righteousness of God. I will daily live by the belief of understanding, grace, empowering change, and I will daily flood my life with the Word of God and the praises of His saints. And I put my name on here, and at the top there's a place for you guys to sign your name right above the righteousness of God. So it has been an honor for me today to spend this time with you. Missy, thank you so much. And Wyndi and Justin, thank you so much. Listen, every day we have to choose to walk away from the world's influence and keep our eyes focused on the grace of God. I tell you what, that's a powerful thing. My announcer here will begin to share with you some very special resources that I've put together to help you always choose a life of grace. Watch this, and we'll be right back.
23.5 million people are struggling with drug addiction in the world today. In 2014, over 7 million Americans battled this addictive spirit, and these statistics are growing at an alarming rate. Children as young as 12 years old are sneaking the painkillers sitting in your medicine cabinets, and the risk of overdose has doubled in the past 5 years. On today's episode of Your World, you heard 3 powerful stories of drug addiction. Missy experienced the effects of drugs through her son, who lived a happy life until his drug habit took his life. Wyndi and Justin both lived normal lives, but made a 180-degree turn to severe drug addictions, and they still face the consequences of those choices today. We all want to live a happy, healthy, successful life, but too often, under the surface, we struggle with addictions to drugs, money, sex, or even food. The spirits behind these substances attach themselves to us and keep us bound. If you or someone you love is struggling with addiction, you may feel like there's no way out. Even if you feel you've hit rock bottom, there's always hope. God has the keys to breaking the chains binding you to your past, your mistakes, and your addictions. It's time for you to join Him in the battle for your life. With your love gift of just $40, Creflo Dollar will send you his 4-CD series and mini book entitled The Art of Spiritual War. In this powerful series, you will learn how to fight the enemy and his nefarious tricks. Use the mini book as a guide for daily spiritual nourishment. You can defeat the enemy and be a conqueror. You will also receive an additional mini-book titled Grace in Spiritual Warfare. Follow along as Creflo Dollar explains how the grace of God will help you receive your victory, even in the midst of your war. This mini-book will also help you and your loved ones prepare to fight the spirits haunting you. The enemy will come after you when you least expect it, and you must be prepared. We are all created in God's image and have the ability to conquer this spiritual war. If you are battling the spirit of addiction for yourself or someone you love and want to know how to prevail, call us right now to purchase this amazing bundle. Your love gifts towards this ministry are not only helping you get what you need to fight the enemy and emerge victorious, your selfless support also helps Creflo Dollar and his team help others who are also struggling in the community and even worldwide. We need your help to touch the lives of others. Changing the world starts with you. And to show how much we really appreciate your support, we will also provide you with a free bonus, the uncut DVD of today's interview, along with your spiritual warfare bundle. So if you call now, you'll receive the mini book, the 4-CD series, The Art of Spiritual War, the Grace in Spiritual Warfare mini book, and the complete uncut DVD of today's interview for your love gift of only $40. Call now to start making an impact on yourself, your family, someone you love, or those in the world who also desperately need your help. Call now.
I want to thank my guests, Missy, Justin, and Wyndi, for sharing their stories with us today. Listen, if there's something going on in your world today and you or your child needs help, or if you know someone who needs help, please reach out and connect with us online at yourworldwithcreflo.com for more information. Meanwhile, stay connected with me on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, and know that I'd love to hear your story. And I'll see you next time right here on Your World.
World Changers Bible School presents the PMP Bootcamp Workshop. The Project Management Professional, or PMP certification, is the profession's most globally recognized and respected credential based on the Project Management Institute's internationally proven and innovative practices. The 6-week boot camp workshop is facilitated by veteran PMP certified instructors. For more information and to register, go to worldchangersbibleschool.org or text PMP to 51555.
On Your World, you hear real stories from real people. Each guest receives a reminder of God's plan for good in their lives with the Grace Certificate. Today, you can receive your very own Grace Certificate. This certificate is an inspiring reminder that you are the righteousness of God. Simply go to yourworldwithcreflo.com now or text GRACE to 51555 and download your own certificate in minutes. When visiting New York and Atlanta, join Creflo Dollar at World Changers Church International. Service times are Saturdays at 6 p.m., Sundays at 10 a.m., and Wednesdays at 7 p.m. For more information, visit us online at creflodollarministries.org. Because of you, Creflo Dollar Ministries is providing a new understanding of grace and empowering change in the lives of millions of people every day. Thank you, partners and friends. Your love and financial support makes it possible to bring this message into millions of homes all across the globe.